Coming to you from the TCT studios in the heartland of America. Truth shouldn't be complicated, but these days it often is, where faith, culture, and real issues shaping our world converge. Today, we cut through the noise. Welcome to Frankly Speaking.
Welcome. I'm Frank Amedia, and I can only be frank. Today's presentation is the fifth in our special edition series on Frankly Speaking, which is God, Israel, and the Ambassador. And this is inspired by my exclusive interview with Ambassador Yechiel Michael Leiter. As we unwind portions of the interview, we have been identifying significant correlations in this very interesting man's life that reveal noticeable prophetic threads of divine preparation and calling for both he and his family. Now, we shall continue to see that throughout this special edition series of Frankly Speaking, even as we continue to receive more insight into his life story, that clearly the hand of God is upon this man and his seed. I encourage you to take in all of the segments, following them as they have been and shall be presented sequentially in order for you to grasp the whole story, even as I am presenting context to a variety of topics that correspond to this interview, which are intended to provide you with significant biblical foundation and also truths. We've come to a point in the interview when the ambassador opened up a window into his heart that had been ruptured with the pain of war and tragedy. First, as a young IDF medic going into war in Lebanon back in 1982 and tending to the wounded, some who did not make it, commiserating with the memory of going to funerals of friends and fellow soldiers. No doubt, he continued to experience the pain that all of Israel citizens share in that small nation that is tightly knit. So many children and fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters killed with savage bombings, terrorist acts, and wars that seem to never end. But then one of the most dreadful of all tragedies to endure, when the men in uniform tasked with notifying a family that their loved one has been killed in action come to your house and knock at the door. For Yechiel, it was the middle of the night that he received the visit no family wants to ever have. In response to the October 7 massacre that murdered over 1,200 Israelis, injured hundreds more, and resulted in the kidnapping of 250 plus seniors, women, men, children, even babies, his oldest son, Major Moshe Leiter, was killed in battle on Shabbat Friday, November 10, 2023. Yechiel Leiter had 4 sons on the front lines and 2 sons-in-law fighting on the front lines in Gaza at that time, and at that moment facing these uniformed soldiers at his door in the darkness of that dreadful evening. He did not know which son it was about. He shared that he stopped breathing until they said the name. Major Moshe Leiter was killed in battle in the service of his country. His next words, "Tell me, and what of his brother David?" They responded, "No, David is okay." You see, David was a commando serving also under his brother's command. And as it was, David was only 40 meters behind Moshe when he was blown apart by a booby trap at the tunnel. More tragedy. David witnessed, as Yechiel shared, his brother Moshe being killed and going into heaven. Can you imagine that mixture of pain and relief flooding over this father simultaneously? How do you process something like that? Now, Laura Lee and I have 2 children serving in the military presently, and we can relate to this dreadful thought of having one of those visits at the door. God has been gracious to us. But to have 6 sons in battle at the same time, and 2 of them in the same elite commando group flushing out tunnels, looking to find and rescue hostages, it just seems like too much to bear. Yet this is unfortunately an often too common pattern of life at risk at all times for so many families in Israel. whether an actual battle with an enemy in the war zone or vulnerable to the bombs and rocket blasts from 7 fronts that threaten everyone in Israel. Now let's take a pause and hear from this message with my appeal to you, my brothers and sisters, to join us as we take action to provide a motorcycle for Magen David Adom, the Israel Red Cross, to save lives in Israel. And we are doing this in memory of Major Moshe Leiter. Family, I took a little pause here in our studio, as you could see, because I want to have a heart-to-heart with you. We're about $12,000 shy on closing out on our request to be able to purchase this motorcycle and get it to the Israeli Red Cross as soon as possible. We want to dedicate this motorcycle that we've been asking you to help us with for the memory of Moshe Leiter and his life that he gave. Will you help us? That $12,000 shy, 6 of it's going to be made up between my wife and I and 4 others that we're inviting to join us. Do whatever you can do, and I want to thank those of you who have already been giving. I know we can get there and that we can make this pledge very quickly. You're the best, and we've got other causes to get onto as well, but this will save lives. Let's go now to my exclusive interview with Ambassador Leiter and pick up where young Yechiel, the settler in Hebron, comes face to face with horrors of war in 1982 and then spanning up to the death of his son Moshe and the noticeable impact on him that has shaped his life in so many ways.
So I found myself there. Those were the heady days of the Camp David Accords,
yes,
with Prime Minister Begin, Jimmy Carter, and then, of course, there was the war in Lebanon, and that was a real awakening for me, because the army then became something which wasn't theoretical. You know, I was going to war and lost many friends. You know, as a kid, that was really.
You served as a medic.
Yeah, I served as a medic in Lebanon, a combat medic, and it was the first time I experienced, you know, as a young man, going to funerals of friends who were killed in war. I really took a whole different strain of thinking regarding life and what my responsibilities are in this world.
Well, it's such a stark reality to so many in Israel, and even for us. I have 2 children serving. One I can't talk about too much, and then the other one, she's a JAG for NATO. We'll see how long that lasts at this point. So it gives you some sleepless nights, and I know that you've had, I think at one time when October 7th happened, you had, I think, 4 children and 2 son-in-laws all serving at that time. Is that correct?
Yeah. I actually lost my oldest son 2 weeks into the war. He was a commando who led the forces into Gaza.
He was a Sadat?
I'm sorry?
He was with the special?
Well, yeah, he spent about 15 years in what is our equivalent of the Delta Force. It's special ops in the Air Force.
Yes.
So in reserves, you know, at 33, he decided to go to med school. He was a crazy kid. You know, he had 4 kids at the time. And he said, I'm in line to.
I think he's his father. He was his father.
Yeah, he was much greater than his father. He was light years ahead of his dad. Let me tell you, it's my great privilege to have fathered him.
Moshe Yedidia.
Moshe Yedidia, yeah. Moshe Yedidia means friend of God. Moshe Yedidia, and he was in charge of providing security. You know, the Philippines had a terrible earthquake in 2013. And we sent our Homeland Security teams out to the Philippines to assist them. And he was in charge of security. And he came back and he said, Dad, I'm going to go to med school. I said, you're in line to become commander of the unit. I mean, come on. You know, you're going to be commander of the Delta Force. He said, no, I want to go to med school. I said, well, what were you smoking in the Philippines? He said, look, I spent all my life, my adult life, learning how to take people out. I want to spend the rest of my life giving life and healing people, because I saw the doctors. He said, our Israeli doctors were pulling bodies out of the rubble after 4 or 5 days and bringing them back to life. He said, I want to be with them. I want to do that. So he struggled. It was difficult. You know, he had to provide for a family. I told him I'd stand behind him. He didn't have to go in after October 7th.
Well, he did not.
No, he then had 6 children. He had just completed med school. And
One is Ivry, the little baby.
Ivry, he just born. He was 2 months old. He doesn't know his dad. But he chose. And the general of the Southern Command asked him actually to lead the lead company. There's a brigade called 551, which are commandos in reserves. And you know, when a brigade goes in, it goes in like a pyramid, right? So you have a lead company.
Right.
And he actually led the brigade inside. They fought for 14 days. And on the 14th day, it was a Friday afternoon, he was given an order to find a terror tunnel, a Hamas tunnel in northern Gaza. And the intel said it was in the main mosque in this town. Imagine that, you know, people don't understand what we experienced in Gaza.
Yeah.
I mean, they build their forward terror positions in mosques and hospitals and clinics and schools and kindergartens. So he scoured the mosque for about an hour, and they didn't find the tunnel. And he could have pulled back, but the intel said that the terrorists were in the tunnel. So he had to make a split-minute decision. Does he pull back and then take the chance of the terrorists emanating from the tunnel and shooting his soldiers from behind? Or does he continue to pursue finding the tunnel, which he decided to do? And he found the tunnel, but as soon as he found it, the terrorists in the tunnel set off a massive explosion. It was hidden under the floor, and it basically blew out his lower torso and those 3 commandos who were with him. And it was so strong that it brought down the walls. So they were hit both from below and above. The ceiling collapsed on them. The building actually collapsed on them after they had lost their lower torso. So they didn't have a chance of survival. And the 5 of his soldiers on the other side of the wall lost legs. 2 lost both legs and 3 lost 1 leg. But he was a great hero. And when they came knocking on the door, the most difficult experience, I hope never have that kind of experience again. But you know, you look out the peephole and you see the green uniform. It was 12:30 at night. My only question was, you know, who did it fall on? Because at that time, I had 4 of my boys on the front, and my 2 sons-in-law. So he was of my boys. He was the only officer. But my 2 sons-in-law are also officers in the Givati Brigade, and I knew they were in combat as well. So when he said it fell on Moshe, the 2 officers, I said, just tell me that David is okay, because my 4th son was a soldier of Moshe, and he was actually 40 meters away from the explosion. I mean, he saw his older brother and commander go up to heaven.
Moshe Yedidia Leiter was born in Hebron, which is the biblical place of the patriarchs and matriarchs, where even his father Yechiel, Michael Leiter, had chosen to settle into when he made his aliyah to Israel at the early age of 18. Moshe was raised in Ele, Israel, which is named after the biblical high priest living in the days of the judges and serving God at the tabernacle in Shiloh. Eli is best remembered for his interactions with the famous prophet Samuel. Samuel was dedicated to the tabernacle by his mother, Hannah, who was barren until she was blessed by Eli, and then she had her son. She named him Samuel, which means asked of God, and then left him with Eli in the tabernacle to be raised up as dedicated to serve the Lord. He became the famous prophet. A little side note. when I was expelled from the temple because I was sharing my revelation of Jesus as the Messiah with some of the women who asked me about my newfound faith. I had even put a bumper sticker on my old car that said, "Yeshua is the Messiah." I was watching a young Jewish boy practice his bar mitzvah readings in a Saturday morning service, a Shabbat service, and I had already been reeling from the rejection of my family and my community, and that temple was my place of refuge. I just waited for Shabbat every Saturday so I could get there and feel as if I was somehow receiving from God. And I was watching the Father and His Son standing together. And even while they were doing so, I said a prayer. I said, "Oh God, if I could have a son someday that will love God." And at this time, this seemed so remote to me and even beyond reason to me, given my solitary life and rejection at the time. And the rabbi, who was seated in his large altar chair with his eyes closed, stood up on the altar and leaned over his pulpit and looked straight at me. I was in the rear of the sanctuary. And then he said this. He said, "As Jews, we do not believe that Jesus was the Messiah, nor the Son of God. If you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, then you don't belong here." I knew at that moment that this was a hard test for me. Should I just cower down in my seat and signal that I'm willing to reject Jesus as my Lord, or do I stand up and leave? It was a heart-rending moment, and I really was shattered. It seemed as if every head was turned and looking right at me, and I somehow gathered the courage. I stood up and I made my way quietly to the front entrance of the lobby at the exit door. But I began to weep as the brevity of the finality of this crossroads in my life pierced my heart like an arrow. And then I heard this voice deep in my spirit, "My son, be strong and know that I am God. You will have a son, and you shall call him Samuel Isaac." I limped out of the tabernacle that morning with that promise in my heart. My heart was broken, but yet I had a promise. Beloved, God is faithful. I have an amazing wife, Laura Lee, and 3 beautiful and gifted daughters who all believe in God and are raising beautiful children. They love their father, and I love them. And Carissa's the oldest, and then next comes Michal, who works with me a lot in the ministry, and then Keshet, and then the youngest child, a son, Samuel Isaac, as the Lord said, who indeed loves the Lord. But from that desperate moment when it seemed that all was lost, the Lord has blessed abundantly beyond anything I could have imagined at the time. As for Laura Lee and I, our quiver is getting full with 10 grandchildren and a worldwide family of brothers and sisters, children and grandchildren in the Lord. So let's get back to Moshe Leiter. Born in Hebron, and with the same zeal as his father, he was raised in Eli, which was only established in 1984 by just 3 families in the West Bank, which is part of Judea and Samaria. So Moshe grew up in a family of patriotic olim, which is Hebrew for immigrants, and intellectuals, obviously called to this challenging place to contribute, like his father, to resettle Judea and Samaria. Moshe had spent 15 years in one of Israel's most elite units called the Sheldog, which is one of IDF's most classified special forces units, and it's the equivalent of our own U.S. military Delta Force. He rose to the head of operations and carried out missions that to this day remain classified. He left the Army then to pursue becoming a medical doctor in healing the sick and wounded after an epiphany in his own life, watching Israeli medical teams in the Philippines responding to disasters in other nations. Moshe graduated medical school and then received his white coat on August 2023 and was due to start his internship on October 8th, the day after the October 7 terrorist attack. He thought he was done with war, until the call came in October from a general asking him to come back as a reserve major and company commander in the 551st Reserve Paratrooper Brigades, which is also in the 697th Battalion. Moshe did not need to go back to war. He had already served honorably, he'd sacrificed, and now with his beloved wife Zippy, they had 6 children, with the youngest, Ivry, only 3 months old when his father was killed. This baby would never know his father personally. And alongside his medical studies, Moshe was involved in training hundreds of young men in a program dedicated to training these ultra-Orthodox men in computer science, which was preparing them to draft into the IDF's prestigious Unit 8200. Philanthropist Miriam Adelson wrote about Moshe. He was among the most promising students in the medical school that I founded with my late husband, Sheldon, at Ariel University. She also went on to say he was a father of 6, yet he deemed and seemed to be the eternal, inquisitive child with a mischievous smile that would never leave his lips. At his funeral in Jerusalem, his daughter, Carmi, said that her father, Moshe, made me into the best version of myself. Abba, I admired your knowledge, your modesty. I learned from you not to give up. I always felt protected next to you. You projected calm and control in your eyes. Daddy, you have left an enormous hole. You should know that we will be strong. His wife, Zippy, recalled their love of 20 years. All of my life, she said, I asked for peace and quiet, and I found them in your heart. You are still inside me, even though you're gone. You died a hero's death. Your almost 40 years were like 80 years of anyone else. You were one big light, and now that light has been spread into 1,000 tiny pieces. And what of Yechiel Michael Leiter? Well, from Moshe's grave, this bereaved Israeli-American father called on then United States President Joe Biden not to pressure Israel to stop its war to out Hamas from Gaza. Even then, serving his country at this most tragic time in his life, this man held strong. He said, there are rumors that you are putting pressure on Israel to hold off, to seize the offensive. If those rumors are true, and I hope they are not, but if they are true, Mr. President, I respectfully ask of you here on my son's grave to cease and desist. The bereaved father pled with President Biden. Now, when Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, called Michael Leiter after Moshe's death, Leiter told him, Bibi, my son's blood was not shed in vain. Go finish this. That sentence became more than grief. It became a mission and a rallying cry for the entire shocked nation that was reeling from the October 7th attack and the nightmare of the plight of the 250 hostages. Ambassador Leiter's words, my youngest son David saw his older brother Moshe get blown apart and go into heaven. Moshe Yedidia Leiter, Yedidia, which means the friend of God. Even as the words of our Lord in John chapter 15, verse 13 are written, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. Well, friends, once again, I'm appealing to you to join us as we complete raising the funds needed to purchase the motorcycle that we are presenting in memory of Major Moshe Leiter Leiter. We're going to return right after this message, and I want to share with you a preview of our forthcoming program. Family, I took a little pause here in our studio, as you could see, because I want to have a heart-to-heart with you. We're about $12,000 shy on closing out on our request to be able to purchase this motorcycle and get it to the Israeli Red Cross as soon as possible. We want to dedicate this motorcycle that we've been asking you to help us with for the memory of Moshe Leiter and his life that he gave. Will you help us? That $12,000 shy, 6 of it's going to be made up between my wife and I and 4 others that we're inviting to join us. Do whatever you can do, and I want to thank those of you who have already been giving. I know we can get there and that we can make this pledge very quickly. You're the best, and we've got other causes to get onto as well, but this will save lives. I want to share with you a preview from our next program when we realize that Leiter is now receiving a call from Bibi, the Prime Minister, but also a call to his destiny from the Lord God of Israel.
Yes, sir. You know, we reference that here in this country as a Gold Star family. And I can't tell you how overwhelming it was to me to hear your words. And especially when you responded to what I saw recorded from the Prime Minister when he called you, and your comment to him that your son gave blood for this cause.
Well, sometimes you say about real life, you can't make this stuff up. Yeah. So it's like 6 months after I lost my son, and I was facing every morning with the challenge of getting out of bed, because it's really tough.
True.
And there were mornings I just try to scrape myself off the floor. You know, what was I going to do? And I was trying to do good during the course of the day. I would go to other families that were mourning for their sons and try to console them. And all of a sudden, my esteemed colleague and dear friend, Ron Dermer.
Well, I sure do hope that you set us on your recording dial for Frankly Speaking, and to also continue to join us in this special edition series of God, Israel, and the Ambassador. Do stay in touch with us on social media, as you see on the screen. Copy the code. We want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I think you're going to enjoy what's coming not only in the next few days, but throughout this year. Once again, Frank and Media here. This is Frankly Speaking, and as far as I know, I can only be frank. God bless you.